Why your brain feels slower after burnout. One of the most frightening changes people notice after burnout is this. Their brain feels slower. Thinking takes more effort. Concentration disappears quickly. Memory feels unreliable. Simple decisions feel heavy. And people start to worry. Did burnout damage my brain? Because tasks that once felt easy now feel demanding. Reading takes longer. Finding words becomes harder. Multitasking feels impossible. And mental fatigue appears quickly. So people fear something is permanently wrong. But what many don't realize is this. A slower brain after burnout is not usually damage. It is adaptation. And it is connected to how the brain conserves energy during long-term stress. Because the brain is one of the most energy-consuming organs in the body. Although it represents only a small part of body weight, it uses a large portion of available energy. So when the nervous system enters long-term survival mode, energy allocation changes. Resources shift toward systems needed for immediate survival. Heart rate regulation. Muscle readiness. Threat detection. Stress hormone production. And less energy becomes available for complex thinking. Planning. Creativity. Long attention. Abstract reasoning. This is not accidental. It is protective. In survival mode, quick reactions matter more than deep thinking. So the brain prioritizes speed over complexity. And this shift involves changes in how brain regions interact. During chronic stress, areas involved in threat detection, like the amygdala, become more active. At the same time, regions involved in planning and concentration, especially parts of the prefrontal cortex, reduce activity. This pattern helps during danger. But becomes exhausting when stress continues for months or years. Because the brain remains biased toward survival processing. Not toward reflection or creativity. Another biological factor contributes. Long-term stress often disrupts sleep quality. Even when people sleep enough hours, sleep becomes lighter. More fragmented. And deep sleep, which supports brain recovery and memory consolidation, becomes reduced. So mental fatigue accumulates. Concentration worsens. Memory feels unreliable. And thinking feels slower. Inflammation also plays a role. Chronic stress can increase inflammatory activity in the body and brain. And inflammation affects neural signaling efficiency, which can further reduce mental clarity and increase fatigue. So slower thinking after burnout is often the result of multiple systems protecting energy. Not brain damage, but conservation. Another important detail appears here. When cognitive capacity drops, effort increases. And increased effort itself costs energy. So thinking becomes tiring. Which makes concentration shorter. Which again feels like cognitive decline. This creates fear. And fear itself activates stress responses. Which further reduces cognitive resources. And people end up trapped in a cycle. Worrying about mental performance makes performance worse. Another misunderstanding appears here. People often expect mental clarity to return early in recovery. But cognitive performance usually improves only after regulation improves. Because concentration requires energy availability and nervous system stability. If the system still prioritizes protection, thinking remains secondary. So mental sharpness often returns later in recovery. And usually gradually. First concentration lasts slightly longer. Then mental fatigue appears later in the day. Then memory becomes more reliable again. Small improvements accumulate quietly. Until one day, thinking feels easier again. Often without people noticing exactly when the change happened. Because recovery rarely feels dramatic. It feels gradual. Subtle. Almost invisible while it happens. So if your brain currently feels slower. If focus disappears quickly. If memory feels unreliable. It does not automatically mean something is permanently damaged. It often means the nervous system is still conserving energy after long-term overload. And energy conservation affects thinking first. Understanding this does not immediately restore concentration. But it explains why mental performance changes during burnout. And when these changes begin to make sense, fear often decreases. Not because recovery suddenly becomes easy, but because reactions stop feeling mysterious. And when reactions stop feeling mysterious, recovery often feels slightly less threatening. And sometimes, that understanding becomes one of the first signs that the brain is already moving slowly back toward balance again.